Hello everyone, it's Jesse from Triple J Prep, and this is the first video of my ACT Workthrough series. In this series, I'll work through entire sections of the ACT and show how I, a 36 scorer, approach the questions. Today I'll be working through the math section of the 2018 through 2019 Preparing for the ACT test booklet, which I'll link to in the description below. And I recommend that you first work through questions by yourself and then watch my video and check over the questions that you answered incorrectly or you took too long on. And that way you'll get the maximum benefit from watching my video. But if you want to just watch the video by itself, that's also fine. And without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so the first question. This recipe requires 3 eggs and makes 6 servings. And he now wants to use 5 eggs and increases all of the ingredients proportionally. Now how many servings will the recipe make? So we know that 3 makes 6 servings, 3 eggs make 6 servings. To go from 3 to 6, we multiply by 2. So if we're using 5 eggs, we also multiply by 2. Now we make 5 times 2 equals 10 servings. Next question, the 35-member history club, so 35 members, they're electing a representative. The representative will be chosen at random, and it cannot be any of the 3 officers of the club. What was the probability that Hirogo, who is a member but not an officer, will be chosen? So remember, he's a member, not an officer, so that means he can be chosen, so it can't be 0, first off. And we see that there's 35 members, but 3 are officers, so that means only 35 minus 3 equals 32. There's only 32 people who can be chosen, because 3 of them are officers, so we have to subtract those 3. Now remember, the formula for probability is the desired outcomes divided by the total number of outcomes. So the total possible outcomes are 32 because there's only 32 people that can be chosen. The 3 officers don't count. And then there's only one desired person that we want. There's only one desired outcome. That desired outcome is Hirogo, that one person. So the answer would be 1 over 32. For what value of x is this equation true? So for this to be true, let's see. We have 2 to the something, 2 to the something, 2 to the power equals 2 to the 15. So for this to be true, then 2x plus 7 must equal 15. Otherwise, it can't be true. So now we just solve the equation. We solve for x. So we subtract 7 on both sides. We get 2x equals 8. And then x must equal, divide by 2 on both sides, and we get x equals 4. In the next question, we're given this function, and we're just asked for the value of f of 3. So that means we just plug in 3 for every x we see in the equation. So 5, 3 squared, minus 7, 4 times 3, plus 3. And now just evaluate this. We have 5 times 3 squared, 3 squared is 9, 5 times 9 is 45. Minus 7, 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15. Now we have 45 minus 7 times 15, so we'll just plug this into our calculator here. So we do 45 minus 7 times 15. Negative 60, and that'll be our answer. A wallet contains 5 $5 bills, 7 $10 bills, and 8 $20 bills. And we're going to draw one bill randomly. What is the probability that it will be a $20 bill? So remember our probability formula, it's desired divided by total outcomes. So let's figure out how many total outcomes are. So let's figure out how many bills there are. So there are 5 bills, 7 bills, and 8 bills. So that'll be 7 plus 8 plus 5 is 20 bills total. And then how many do we desire? We desire $20 bills, and there's 8 of them. So that's 8 over 20. Let's simplify the fraction by dividing on 4. Dividing by 4 on top and bottom, so that'll be 2 over 5. That's our answer. The ABC Book Club charges a $40 monthly fee and $2 per book read in the month. The other club, EBC, Easy Book Club, charges $35 monthly and $3 per book read in that month. So how many books must be read in 1 month? Remember, that's 1 month, so this $40 monthly, it's charged only once because it's only for 1 month. How many books must be read for the total charges to be equal? So we know we're trying to set, we know we need to set 2 equations equal to each other. So let's figure out what those 2 equations are. So ABC, $2 per book read in the month, so 2B, $2 per book, plus the 40 monthly must be equal to, because we're saying we need the total charges to be equal. And then the Easy Book Club has $3 per book, so 3B, B is the number of books read, plus a 35 monthly. Now you're solving the equation. Subtract 2b on both sides. We'll get 40 equals b plus 35. And then subtract 35 on both sides. We'll get b equals 5. That is our answer. I'm not going to bother reading this question because we're given a diagram and it seems like the diagram gives us all we need. So we don't want to waste time if we don't have to, right? So I know this is a parallelogram, and that means I know that these two angles are equal. And if you didn't know that, you could kind of see it anyway. These two angles, they intuitively must be the same. So this must be 40 degrees. And then since we're looking for this little angle here, it's an angle in a triangle, right? So these three angles, 1, 2, and 3, they must add up to 180. So if you do 180 minus 57 minus 40, that will give us a question mark angle. So let's just enter that in our calculator. 180 minus 57 minus 40, that'll be minus 97. That'll be 83 degrees. When x equals 1/2 was the value of this expression. So it's plugging in 1/2 for x. So let's do 8 times 1/2 minus 3 over 1/2. 8 times 1/2 is 4 minus 3 over 1/2. So I'll be 1 over 1/2. And remember, 1 divided by 1/2, division can be changed to multiplication by the reciprocal. So we're going to do 1, we change that division sign to multiplication sign, and then we flip the fraction, we get its reciprocal. And that's 2. Or you could think of it as how many times is 1/2 going to 1? And that's twice. So that also works. What's the midpoint of these 2 points? So remember our midpoint formula, that will be x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, since these are points, y1 plus y2 over 2. So apply that formula here. So 3 plus 1 is 4 over 2, comma, 8 plus negative 4 is 4, again over 2, and that will be equal to 2, 2. That's our answer. The fluctuation of water depth is shown in the figure below, and one of the following values gives a positive difference. So we're looking for the positive difference in feet, right? So I notice this unit here, and I'm just going to confirm that the y-axis is indeed in feet. So it is in feet, so we're all good, don't need to worry about that. Difference between the positive water depth, the greatest water depth and the least water depth. So the positive difference between greatest and least. So what's the greatest water depth here? The greatest would be here or here, both are 12. And do 12 minus the least water depth, so the least would be here or here. And if we were to continue the graph, which we don't need to, then it would also be here and etc. So 12 minus 6, because this here is 6. 12 minus 6 is 6. What was the slope of the line through these 2 points? So remember our slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we do 1 minus negative 5 over negative 2 minus 2. That would be 6 over negative 4, which is equal to negative 3 over 2. In this county, the fine for speeding is $17 for each mile per hour over the speed limit. So if I drive 1 mile per hour over the speed limit, I'm fined 17. If I drive 2 miles above the speed limit, 2 miles per hour over the speed limit, then I'm charged 34. So he's fined 221 for driving on a road with a speed limit of 30. What speed was he traveling? Right, so he's fined 221, so let's do 221 divided by 17 to find out how many miles per hour he traveled over the speed limit. So let's take out a calculator, 221 divided by 17, and that's 13 miles per hour. And remember, see, we could choose 13 here, but that would be wrong, right? Because this is how many he's traveling over the speed limit, right? So over speed limit. So we need to do this plus the speed limit, which is 30. And this is what he's traveling at, 43 miles per hour. And see, it's a really easy mistake to pick 13. You could you could confirm to yourself that's not 13 by saying here that the speed limit is 30. If you were actually traveling 13 miles per hour, then that's under speed limit. He wouldn't be fined anything. So that's how you could, tell yourself maybe there's something wrong here if you were going to choose 13. Let's see. What's the sum of the solutions of the two equations below? So let's figure out the solutions to each of those equations. So 8x equals 12, then x is equal to 12 over 8, which is equal to, I'm just going to simplify here, 3 over 2. 2y plus 10 equals 22, so I'm going to do 2y equals minus 10 on both sides, and we'll get 2y equals 12, y equals 6. So then x plus y, that'll be 6 plus 3 over 2. And then that'll be, I know that's 7.5 or 7.5. The average of 5 distinct scores has the same value as the median, right? So remember, average is the mean, median is the middle number. So if we're given 5 numbers from least to greatest, then we choose the middle number, that's a median. The sum of the 5 scores is 420. What's the sum of the 4 scores that are not the median? Right, so the sum of the 5 scores is 420, and the average has the same value as the median. So if the sum of the 5 scores is 420, then the average must be 420 over 5, right? Because to find the average, we add up all the scores, and we're given that that's 420, and we see that there's 5 scores. So we divide this number to sum by the total number of scores. That gives us our average. So 420 divided by 5 is 420 divided by 5, and that is 84. And remember, 84 is also the median, right? So we have number 1, number 2. 84 is the median because 84 is the average, and we're given that the median is equal to the average. So this must be the middle number. And then, that's actually x4, the fourth number, and x5. What's the sum of the 4 scores that are not median? So what's the sum of this and this? So we know that the total sum is 420, right? So then the sum of the other 4 scores must be 420 minus the 84, because if we subtract the 84 from both sides, then that gives us as a sum of the 4 other numbers. So see 420 minus 84. 420 minus 84, and that gives us 336. What is the value of the expression below? So we say it's absolute value. So let's start from the inside and evaluate starting from the inside. So absolute value on the outside. Negative 8 plus 4 is negative 4. So absolute value of negative 4 minus the absolute value of 3 minus 9 is negative 6. So let's evaluate again. So the absolute value of negative 4 is 4 minus the absolute value of negative 6 is 6. Let's evaluate again. So absolute value of negative 2, 4 minus 6 is negative 2. And that would be 2. And you could tell that's not A or B, because if we have absolute value on the outside, then it must be positive, right? It must be positive or 0, so it could be 0, but it can't be A or B. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to x to the 2/3? So if you remember the radical and power rule, the fraction power rule, then you would know that if we have a number a raised to b over c, that's equivalent to a to the b root c, the c root of a to the b. So if we have x to the 2/3, that's equivalent to x squared, the cube root, of x squared. That would be k. In the standard xy coordinate plane, what's the slope of the line of this equation? So if we want slope of a line, we know the formula for a line. The equation of a line is y equals mx plus b, and m is the slope. So let's try to get this equation into this form. So isolate y. So 7y subtract 5 on both sides equals 4x minus 5. And then we want to get y by itself, so we divide by 7. So y equals 4 over 7x minus 5 over 7, just divided by 7 on everything. So now this equation and this equation are pretty much the same thing. There is the same form. So this is our m, that's our slope, and that's our answer, 4/7. For which of the following conditions would a sum of integers, right? Integer means -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, yada yada yada. So negative and positive whole numbers and 0. Would a sum of m and n always be odd? So always has to be odd. So let's think about it. Let's just write out m plus n, and let's give some examples. So if m is odd, right, so let's say m's 3, what if I add 3 to that? Then that gives us 6. That's even, that's not odd, so it can't be f. And if n is an odd integer, well, n here is 3, I add 3, n's 3, I add 3, and it still gives us 6, so it can't be n either. M and n are both odd integers, well, these are both odd, 3 and 3 are both odd, and that gives us an even sum, so that can't be right. M and n are both even integers, so let's try 2 plus 2. That equals 4, that's even, can't be that, so it must be k. The lengths of the two legs are given in inches. The midpoint of AB, the midpoint, is how many inches from A. So let's see here. We know that the midpoint by definition means that these two lengths must be the same. And also it means that this length here, the length from the midpoint to A, that's what we want. It's half of the total length of the side, right? Because that's what midpoint means. So if we just find this entire side and we half it, we multiply it by half, then we have our answer. Right, so 24, 32, we can use Pythagorean theorem here. But we actually don't need to in this case, because this is a Pythagorean triple, right? So remember, I think the most common Pythagorean triple on the ACT is 3, 4, 5, right? 3 squared plus 4 squared is 5 squared. 9 plus 16 is 25. 25 is 5 squared. So this is a Pythagorean triple. And if we get a multiple of it, if we multiply it by 8, right, then we'll get 3 times 8 is 24. 4 times 8 is 32. 5 times 8 is 40. And we see here that 24 is here, 32 is here. The entire side AB must be 40. And then we multiply it by half, divide it by 2 to get just the length. Just get the length that we want, the distance from A to the midpoint, and 40 divided by 2 is 20. In triangle DEF, the length of DE is square root 30, length of EF is 3 inches. What is the length of DF? So let's draw out the triangle first. D, E, and F. DE is square root 30, EF is 3. What is the length in inches of DF? So we see here that there's also an answer choice cannot be determined from given information. So let's think about it. If we're given two sides, if two sides are given to us, can there be only one side length left? Right. So what does that mean? That means if we're given these two sides, is the triangle fixed, right? Can we make multiple triangles out of it? Can we have multiple side lengths as the last side length? Or can we just have one side length? Can we just have one possible side length? So let's think about it. Square root 30 is about 5. So between 5 and 6, so let's say about 5.5, I think. So side length 5.5, let's have it like this. And then side length 3. So this is one side length of DF. This will be DF. This dotted line represents DF. So let's do that again, but let's draw it differently. So 5.5 in the other direction. Let's try to make it as close as possible. And then 3 side. And now DF is like this. It's this long. That's an obvious difference. So we can't actually determine what DF is. We would need an angle, right? Because if we just have two sides like this, but we're not given the angle, right? The difference between these two triangles here is the angle in between, and that changes the length of this opposite side, right? So for this, the angle is acute, and now the side is small. for this triangle, the angle is obtuse, right? And now this angle, now the side is super, super long, right? So if we're not given an angle in between, we can't actually figure out what the length is. There's multiple triangles. There's actually infinite triangles we can make, just given this information. So the answer must be K. Laura plans to paint the 8-foot-high rectangular walls of her room. And before she buys paint, she needs to know how much area needs to be painted. 2 walls are 10 feet wide, and the other 2 walls are 15 feet wide. So 2 walls, remember, 2 walls are 10 feet wide, and the other 2 are 15 feet wide. The combined area of 1 window and 1 door is 60 square feet. And remember, she can't paint over the window and the door, so that means we subtract it from the total area, surface area. What is the area in square feet of the wall surface she needs to paint? So let's calculate the entire area first. So 2 walls are 10 feet wide. So let's think about it. This is one of the set of walls. It's 10 feet wide and then 8 foot high. And the other set is, as the question says, it's 15 feet wide and also 8 feet high. All the walls are 8 feet high. So, and there's 2 of these. And there's 2 of these. So the total area must be 2 times the area of this wall is 8 times 10 plus the 2 walls that are 8 by 15. And we subtract 60 from this, right? Because 60 is the area of the window and the door, and we can't paint over the window or the door, so we have to subtract that. So let's do that in our calculator here. 2 times 8 times 10, that will be 2 times 80, so I already know that's 160. And I can't think what 8 times 15 is, so I'm just going to enter that in my calculator. And then minus 60. That's 340 square feet that she needs to paint. The length of the rectangle is 5 inches longer than the width. The perimeter is 40. What is the width of the rectangle in inches? So let's try to represent this mathematically. The width, let's say x is the width, and the length is 5 inches longer, right? The length is 5 inches longer, so the length must be x plus 5. The perimeter is 40, so that means the perimeter of a rectangle is when you have to add all the sides together, right? So 40, the perimeter, must be equal to all of this added together. So x plus x plus x plus x, 4 x's, plus 5 plus 5 plus 10. Solve the equation, subtract 10 on both sides, and then x equals 30 over 4, which is equal to 15 over 2, so about 7.5, so exactly 7.5 actually. And then x is our width here, right? So we don't need to do any more. It's 7.5. 8% of 60 is 1/5 of what number? So when we have a percent or fraction of something, that means we multiply the two things, right? 8% of 60 is equal to 0.08, 8% times 60, right? So let's try to put this, express this mathematically. So 8% of 60, let's just say 0.08 times 60 is 1/5 of what number? So what number? We'll call that x. 1/5 of what number? So is 1/5 of x, right? So let's solve this equation. If we multiply by 5, then the 5 and the 1/5 cancel out. And we also have to multiply by 5 over here because we have to, what we do to one side, we have to do it to the other. So x, what number, is equal to all of this, right? So let's do that. Let's put that in our calculator. 5 times 0.08 times 60. That's our answer, 24. And if we wanted to check it, we could just do 1/5 of 24. 1 over 5 multiplied by 24. And then that should be 8% of 60. That should be equal to 8% of 60. So 0.08 times 60 should be equal to 4.8. And it is, so we got the correct answer. This is a really huge word problem, so try to get only the information we need out of it. Trying to decide whether to buy season pass to his 20 home games this season. Individual ticket, that means a ticket to one game, is 14. Season pass is $175, so you know $175 covers all 20 games. And for each game, if he were to buy an individual ticket, he'd pay only $14 per game. Let's see. and we're actually given that the season pass does that in the next sentence, but you should be able to think, you should be able to know that for yourself, I think, without that sentence. Minimum number of home games he must attend for the season pass to be, for the cost of the season pass to be less than the total cost of buying an individual ticket for each game he attends. So it's asking basically, how many games does he need to attend for the season pass to be more worth it than individual tickets for each game, right? So let's see. We want the season pass to be less than, so the cost of the season pass should be less than the cost of buying an individual ticket. So individual ticket is $14 per game. We want $175 to be less than $14 times the number of games, right? So this is solve the inequality. We divide by 14 on both sides. We'll get 175 over 14 should be less than G. G is the number of games he needs to attend. And let's put that in a calculator. 175 over 14. 12.5. 12.5 is less than G. So, and it says the minimum number of home games, right? So we want the minimum number, the minimum integer greater than 12.5, right? So 12 is not greater than 12.5, so we can't choose that. 13 is greater than 12.5, and it's the least integer that's greater than 12.5, so 13 must be our answer. This is some scientific notation here, so I want to do this. So we would do this by, well, let me think. What would happen if we entered this in our calculator? I think if we entered it into our calculator, firstly, I think it would take a little too long. Just doing it mentally or by hand is way faster, so let's not do that approach. Let's just do it the old-fashioned way. So we can break this up. We can do 4.8 divided by 1.6, and then 10 to the negative 7 divided by 10 to the negative 11. So let's do that first. 4.8 divided by 1.6, that would be 3. So ready, we can mark out this answer and this answer. And then 10 to the 7, 10 to the negative 7 divided by 10 to the negative 11. So remember exponent rules. If our base is the same and we have division, we just do the top base minus the lower base, the upper base minus the lower base. So 10 to the negative 7 minus negative 11, that would be negative 7 plus 11, 10 to the 4. And we could actually think about it another way, actually. So we have a relatively small number here. It's something multiplied by 10 to the negative 7. So that means we move the decimal point to the left 7 times. That's pretty small. And we're dividing by an even smaller number, right? Dividing by something even smaller. If we divide by a really small number, then our number should be pretty big, right? So this number is even smaller than that number. It should at least be greater than 1. Our answer should at least be greater than 1. So this is not greater than 1, that's not greater than 1, that's greater than 1, and that's greater than 1. But 4.8 divided by 1.6, that's not 3.2, so we can just cross out these answers, and we're left with A. So that's another way to do the answer that might be a little quicker, maybe. Alright. A circle has center, negative 1, 2, and it passes through A, which is 2, 6. Line segment AB is a diameter. What are the coordinates of point B? So when I'm given a geometry problem, even though it takes a little bit of time to draw out the problem, and on ACT Math, you're not really given that much time, I still like to draw out diagrams when I can, because I think it's super helpful for visualization. So let's try that. Try to draw it really fast. So the highest number of all these points is 6, so I'm only going to draw 6 ticks. And actually, I'm not going to draw, I don't think I need to draw more ticks than 4 for the negative axes. So negative 1, 2 is the center, 2, 6 is one endpoint of the diameter. From here, we can figure out that the other endpoint should be somewhere around right here, right? Because it's a diameter, it goes through the center, and then it should end somewhere over there. And let's think about it. So by definition, right? By definition, the diameter, well, actually the center must be the midpoint of the diameter, right? That's just how it is by definition. The center is a midpoint of the diameter. So, and we're given 1 point of the diameter. So we can use the midpoint formula to figure out what the other point is, right? So, let's just do the math. So 2, that's the x-coordinate, plus the other x-coordinate, plus the x-coordinate of this thing, this point, divided by 2, comma, the y-coordinate plus the other y-coordinate divided by 2. That must equal negative 1, negative 1 comma 2. So 2 plus x over 2 must equal negative 1, right? Because negative 1 would be the middle x-coordinate. So 2 plus x must be equal to negative 2, just multiply by 2 on both sides. X must be equal to negative 4, minus 2 on both sides, and we get negative 4. So the x-coordinate must be negative 4, and, well, there's only one answer choice of negative 4, so we already have our answer. Which of the following expressions is a factor of x cubed minus 64? So the first thing I notice here is that this is a difference of cubes, and I can tell because x cubed is, well, x cubed, so it must be a cubed. It must be a cubed. And a 64 is equal to 4 cubed. So it's a difference of cubes. It's x cubed minus 4 cubed. And I can factor. There's a way to factor difference of cubes with subtraction. So it would just be x minus 4, and it'll be x squared plus 4. Let me think. X squared plus 4 minus 4, I believe. No, plus 4. Plus 4x, sorry. It'll be something like this, and we actually wouldn't even need to do any of this because x minus 4 is already over here, so actually all we need to do was this part. Let's see. Next question. The average of a list of 4 numbers is 90, and a new list has the same first 3 numbers, but the 4th number was 80, and now in the new list it's 96. What's the average of the new list of numbers? So, let's see, 4 numbers. The average of 4 numbers would calculate like this, right? So average is equal to the first 4 numbers, so x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus x4 over 4, right? This would be the average. Well, we can also write it like this: x1 over 4 plus x2 over 4 plus x3 over 4 plus x4 over 4. Just distributive property. So we can see that each number contributes a fourth of its value to the average, right? So if the original number was 80, 80 contributes a fourth of its value to the average. It contributes 20 to the average. But now it's 96, right? 96 over 4. And 96 over 4, I know, is 24. So now it's contributing 24 to the average. That's an extra 4 points contributed to the average. So the original average was 90, and nothing else changed. We're contributing an extra 4 to the average, so now it's 94. The number a is located at negative 2.5, and one of the number lines has the location of a squared. So we know negative 2.5 squared is negative 2.5 times negative 2.5. That's 2 negatives, and when you multiply 2 negatives, you get a positive, so it can't be this, it can't be this, and it can only be C, D, or E at this point. And I know that this looks like 2.5 right here. 2.5 times 2.5 is not 2.5. This is 5 right here. 2.5 times 2 is 5. So 2.5 times 2.5 can't be 5. So it must be this one. And that looks about right. I think 2.5 times 2.5 is 6.25, if I'm not mistaken. So that looks about right. Alright. Maria ordered a pizza. She ate 2/9 of it. So 7/9 is left. 1 minus 2/9 is 7/9. She gave the remaining pizza to her 3 brothers. What fraction of the whole pizza will each of the brothers receive if they share equally? So 3 brothers, so that means they each get a third. So I'll divide by 3. 7/9 divided by 3 is the same as 7/9 multiplied by 1/3. Remember, division by something is the same as multiplication by its reciprocal. So we change the division sign to multiplication sign and we flip the number. So let's do the math. 7 times 1 is 7, 9 times 3 is 27. They each get 7/27 of the whole pizza. This number, 1001, is the product of the prime numbers 7, 11, and 13, was a prime factorization of 30,030. So I can tell that 1001 and 30,030, 1001 times 30 equals 30,030, right? Equals 30,030. So I know, well, the question tells me that 1001 can be broken down to 7, 11, and 13. And which means this can also be broken down into 7, 11, and 13. And also the factors of 30. And we're looking for the prime factorization, right? So we can only have prime factors of 30. The prime factors of 30 are, well, the factors of 30 that I can think of off the top of my head are 6 and 5. And 6 is 3 and 2. So 30 is 3, 2, and 5. So that means 30,000 must be 7, 11, 13 from here. And then we tack on a 3, 2, and real line 5. So 7, 11, 13, 3, 2, and 5. 7, 11, 13, 3, 2, and 5. Here's our answer. Let's see. Personally, I wouldn't bother reading this. I don't think it doesn't seem to have anything that important. Yeah, it's not that important, I think. So I'm just gonna go on to the questions. We're given a diagram, so especially on questions where we're given a diagram, the stuff here usually it may not be that important, so I would just skip it for now, and if I need it, I'll go back later for it. What is the area in square inches of the scale drawing of the park? So this word scale drawing, that is something that I would pay attention to. That's something that I would pay really close attention to. So I would see that I would know that this is only a scale drawing. That means these dimensions here, they aren't the actual dimensions of the actual part. So the ACT wouldn't have the scale drawing. They wouldn't put the scale word in for no reason. There's probably going to be a question that tests the knowledge that it's a scale drawing. So this isn't actually the actual dimensions. It's just a scaled down or scaled up version. So whenever I see this word scale, I'm just going to keep that in mind. Anyway, to do this question, what is the area of the scale drawing of the park? So this is the scale drawing, so I'm just going to calculate the area of this. We can see this is a trapezoid, right? 2 parallel sides, and then these sides aren't parallel, so therefore it's a trapezoid. And we know the area of a trapezoid is equal to base 1 plus base 2. So base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2 times the height. And this is just something that you have to memorize. So area would be 28 plus 40. That would be 68 over 2 times 16. That's 34 times 16. And I'm going to pull out the calculator because I cannot do that in my head. 34 times 16. That is the area of the scale drawing. So not the actual drawing, just the scale. Fence on the perimeter of the park was a perimeter in feet, right? So I think in a previous question, we also had a unit in the question, and it wasn't something we needed to get the right answer. But in this question, this is something you must consider if you want to get the right answer, okay? In feet of the park was a perimeter in feet. So now we need to go back to the passage, not the passage, the little blurb at the top. 1 inch on the scale drawing is 1.5 feet. So what we can do here is, let's see, we can calculate the area of the scale drawing, the perimeter of the scale drawing, and then we can multiply by 1.5 at the end to get the perimeter of the actual park. Because 1 inch on the scale drawing is 1.5 feet, in the real world of the park. So perimeter, we have these three sides here, 1, 2, 3 sides. We have these three sides, but we don't have the last side. We don't have this side. So the first instinct I have, as you can see here, is to draw this line, because I know that we can usually use right triangle and Pythagorean theorem to find the length of a side, of a diagonal side. And indeed, we can do that. So we know that this side here must be 16 inches because it's 16 inches over there. So this must be 16. And now we need this side, right? So this side is equal to the long side minus this top side. Because if we do the long side minus the top side, we end up with just this side, and that's what we want. So to get this side, we do 40 minus 28, which is 12. So 12, 16, and we want this side. We could do Pythagorean theorem here, but again, you could recognize that this is a Pythagorean triple, or multiple of, it's multiple of 3, 4, 5. So 3 times 4 is 12, 4 times 4 is 16, 5 times 4 is 20. This last side must be 20. So the perimeter of the scale drawing would be 20 plus 28 plus 16 plus 40. So 20 plus 40, 20 plus 40 plus 16 plus 28. And then you need to remember that this is how many inches of the scale drawing, and we want feet. So 1 inch represents 1.5 feet, so we multiply by 1.5 to get the feet, to get the dimensions in the real world, and that's 156. E. The length of the south side of the park is what percent of the length of the north side? So the length of the south side of the park, that's 40 inches. 40 inches is what percent of the length of the north side? So length of the north side is 28 inches times some percent. So I'm just going to say times x. So 40 equals 28 times x, and x equal to 40 over 28. And pulling out calculator again, so 40 over 28. Sorry, 28. That'll be about 143%. So 1.42 decimal. To convert to a percent, we just multiply by 100. We move the decimal 2 places to right, so it's 143%. About 143%, and that'll be this choice. So another one of the problems with a diagram, or with a little blurb. So let's see. This one, again, I wouldn't bother reading it because we're already given a diagram. It just doesn't seem too necessary to read all of this information here. So Mr. Smith plans to build a 3-foot wide walkway along the outside of the cabin. What is the area in square feet of the top surface of the walkway? So we're finding this area of the walkway. So here's the walkway, and we're given that it's 3 feet wide, so 3, 3, 3, etc. And first last side, that's also 3. We want the area of the walkway. So if we're given this, we want to find the area of the shaded area, right? That's the area of the walkway. So what we could do here is we find the area of the large rectangle, the whole rectangle, and then we subtract the area of the small rectangle, and then that leaves us with just the area of the shaded region. So actually the test makers were nice enough to give us, right, the dimensions of the small and large rectangle. So let's just do it. Let's just do the math. So 36 times 30 minus the area of the small rectangle. So that'll be, the small rectangle is 24 times 30. And if they didn't give us the dimensions of the small rectangle, we could figure out ourselves. So this side is 30, which means this small side here must be 30 minus 3 here minus the 3 here, and that'll give us minus 6. 30 minus 6 is 24. And then we could do that for to get the 30 side as well. So let's just do the subtraction in a calculator, of course, because cannot do that by hand, or actually you could, but it would take way too long, so I'm just going to use a calculator to save time. 360. That is the area in square feet of the walkway, the top surface of the walkway. Another long question. Let's see. She's installing a ceiling fan in each room, and curtains over 4 windows. Each ceiling fan has a price of $52. The curtains for each small window is $39, and the price of curtain for the large window is twice that for a small window. Based on this information, what is the total price for curtains and ceiling fans? So ceiling fans, well, now we're going to have to look into the diagram, right? So ceiling fan, 1 per room, so there's 1, 2, 3 rooms. 3 rooms. So we do 3 multiplied by the price per ceiling fan, so that's 52. Plus, how many small and large curtains are there? There are 1, 2, 3 small windows, so 3 small curtains, and 1 large window, so 1 large curtain. Right. So plus 3 small windows, 3 small curtains, and then the price for each small curtain is 39.5, and then plus the 1 large curtain, and the large window, large curtain is double the price of the small window. So we need to do 39.5 times 2. That's the price of the large curtain, and that is 79. And then we can just enter this in our calculator, and then that should give us the answer. 3 multiplied by 52 for the ceiling fans, the 3 ceiling fans, plus 3, the 3 small curtains, 39.5, plus lastly the price of the large curtain, 79. That gives us 353.5, so about 354. Let's see. They plan to roof the cabin on 2 consecutive days. Chance of rain is independent of the day, so from this second already tell it's a probability question. Indeed it is. Probability that it will rain both days. So we can look, so in the question we're not given the probability that it will rain on one day, so it must be in the little information here, the little blurb. So 20% chance of rain each day. That's what we need to know. So 20% is 0.2. So probably the rain the first day is going to be 0.2, because it says 20% chance of rain each day, so probably the rain the first day is 0.2. And the probability that rain the second day is again 0.2. And then what's the probability that it will rain both days? So we just need to multiply these two numbers, and this can give us the probability that it will rain on both days. So 0.2 times 0.2 is going to be 0.04, and that is our answer. That's the probability that it will rain on both days. Which of the following expressions, when evaluated, equals an irrational number? So let's try to think about it logically here. Square root 2 times square root 8, that will give us square root 16, which is 4, so that's rational. Square root 8 squared, this gives us 8, that is rational, so it's not irrational. And these two. So you could just do it like this. So square root 8, you can factor out a square root 2 from it. So square root 2 is equal to square root 2 times square root 4. The square root 2's cancel out, and you're just left with 1 over square root 4, 1 over 2. And this is rational. Remember, definition of rational number is that it can be expressed as a fraction, of 2 integers. Right, so 1/2 is obviously a fraction of 2 integers, 1 over 2. That's wrong. And similarly, square root 8 over square root 2, we can do it the same way. Square root 2, square root 4 over square root 2. Square root 2's cancel out, we're just left with square root 4 over 2. And 2 is irrational, because you can also express 2 as a fraction. You can express 2 as 4 over 2. You can express 8 as 16 over 2. You could express 4 as 8 over 2. So all of these can be expressed as a fraction of 2 integers, except for this one, because, well, we've marked out 4 answers, so that one cannot be expressed as a fraction of 2 integers. It is irrational. What is the value of tangent theta? So remember from SOHCAHTOA, tangent theta is equal to opposite over adjacent. So let's just this is a right triangle. We need it to be a right triangle for SOHCAHTOA to work. So tangent theta is equal to opposite of adjacent. So let's just first mark the dimensions of the triangle. So if this point is 10, 4, if that point is 10, 4, then this side here must be 10, and the vertical side must be 4. So if tangent theta is opposite of adjacent, the opposite side is 4, the adjacent side is 10. So that's equal to 2/5. And that's the value of tangent theta. This equation has two solutions, and the solutions are equal to the solutions of which answer choice, right? So an absolute value equation or inequality, well, let's isolate the absolute value first. So absolute value 2x minus 8 is equal to minus 3 on both sides. It's equal to 2. So let's think about it. The absolute value can always be separated into two equations. An absolute value equation can be separated into two equations that don't contain absolute value. So you see here that all of these answer choices, none of them has an absolute value. So let's think about it. If we have square root of x and we need it to be equal to 2, what can x equal for absolute value of x equal to? Well, of course, x can equal 2 because absolute value of 2 is 2. What else can x equal? X can equal negative 2 because if we do the absolute value of negative 2, well, that also gives us 2. And now we have an idea of how to do this question. So for absolute value of 2x minus 8 to be equal to 2, 2x minus 8 can be equal to 2. Or if we look back here, if x is equal to negative 2, then if I multiply by negative 1 on both sides, negative x must be equal to 2, right? So that means negative 2x minus 8 can be equal to 2. And indeed, that is an answer choice. That's answer choice K. We're given this frequency chart here. How many students have a test score in the interval 71 to 80? Right, so we see here that none of these intervals is 71 to 80. So we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to do a little bit of thinking here. We can see that we want 71 to 80, and 71 to 80 is somewhere right here, right? Because this line will be 71, and then this line here is 80. So now let's do something. We know our answer choice is going to come from somewhere over here, right? Let's draw one more line. So our answer will come from there. So let's think about it. The interval 65 to 80 has all the students in 65 to 70, right? So I'm going to write it out. 65 to 80, this interval, has all the students from 65 to 70, and also all the students from 71 to 80, because all test scores are whole numbers. So it can't be from like 70.9 to 80. It has to be from 71 to 80. It has to be whole numbers. It has the students from 65 to 70 and 71 to 80. Well, 65 to 80 is 13 students. Actually, 65 to 70 has 12 students. We're given that. And then 71 to 80 is what we're looking for. So 65 to 80 has 13 students. And then, so 65 to 80 has 13 students. 65 to 70 has only 12 students. So where'd that other one come from? The other one must be here, right? It's because 12 students plus 1 student equals 13 students. So 71 to 80 must have 1 student. Let's see. We're given this equation, and I is sound intensity, K is a constant. How many decibels are produced when sound intensity is 1,000 times the value of K? So sound intensity remembers I, so I is 1,000 times the value of K. So let's write out the equation. D equals 10 log I remembers 1,000 times the value of K, so I is 1,000 K over K didn't change, so let's just write that out. D equals 10 log 1,000 K over K. The K's cancel out, so we're just left with, the K's cancel out, so we're just left with 1,000. Log 1,000 is equal to 3. So 10 times 3 is 30. And how we know that log 1000 equals 3 is like so. Log has, by default, if a base is not written, then we know it has a base of 10. And just the rules of logarithms, log base 10 of 1000 can be rewritten as 10 to the question mark equals 1000. 10 to the what power equals 1000? Well, 10 to the 3 equals 1000. So log 1000 must be equal to 3. And if you forget that, then you could always enter log 1000 into your calculator. That will also give you 3. How many points did Mario score playing basketball last season? Right, so we see here that he attempts some shots, but he only makes some of the shots, right? He attempts these shots, but he only makes some of them. And of course, he only gets points for the ones he makes, right? So he gets 1 point for the amount he gets correct, the amount he makes. So he gets 1 point for, well, let's try to figure out how many does he make if he attempts 80 and gets only 75% of them. Then he makes only 80 times 0.75, right? So he gets 1 point for 80 times 0.75. He gets 2 points for the amount he gets correct. The amount he makes is 60 times 0.9, and he gets 3 points for each of the for each shot he makes, which is 60 times 0.25. And remember, this is percent successful, so we can just multiply number attempted by the percent successful, and that gives us how many shots he makes. What the ACT could do to trick you, maybe, is they could say percent not successful, in which case, you would have to subtract each of these percent from 1. So 75% not successful would mean 25% successful. So that's one way they could trick you up. Anyway, well, they didn't do it this time. So if he gets all of these points, so we just add them together, and then that'll give us our answer. So this is due on our calculator. So 80 times 0.75 plus 2 times 60 times 0.9 plus 3 times 60 times 0.25. And this should give us our answer, 213. And indeed, that is our an answer choice. The graph of y equals absolute value of x minus 6 is in the coordinate plane. Which of the following transformations, when applied to y equals absolute value of x, results in this graph? So how do we change this to give us the graph of this? That's essentially what the question is asking. So if you know your, I think this is an Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 topic. If you've learned it before, you know that when you have x inside parentheses, or in this case absolute values, they serve the same function as parentheses. When you have, when we subtract a positive number inside parentheses from x, when you subtract a number from x in the parentheses, subtract a positive number, then it goes to the right that many units. So if we subtract 6, it actually goes to right 6 units. If you didn't know that, or if you forgot that, what you could do is you can graph it. You can always graph it. That's what a calculator is really good for. So absolute value of x minus 6. So the absolute value, you can find it here. You press math, you go right, and then absolute value is there, x minus 6. Then you can graph it. So you see here that regular absolute value of x has a center, not center, but a vertex, the little point. It's at 0, 0, right? Because absolute value of 0 is 0, so 0, 0 is a point on absolute value of x. And you can see here that if we do absolute value of x minus 6, it moved to right 6 units, so it must be f. Toby wants to find the volume of a toy soldier. He fills a rectangular container that is 8 centimeters long, 6 centimeters wide, and 10 centimeters high with water to a depth of 4 centimeters. So the water is only 4 centimeters high right now. He submerges a toy soldier in water, and the height becomes 6.6 centimeters. So the height went from 4 to 6. What is the volume of the toy soldier? So this is something you should know from if you've ever taken a science class before. If we have a volume of water, say this is 50 mils of water, and we put something in it, say we put a cube in it. Well, if we put anything in water, the volume of that cube displaces the water, right? The water that was once here, the cube is now filling that space up. So the water level goes up because now there's something inside filling up the water. But the water has to go somewhere, right? The water can't just disappear just because the cube's there. The water level has to rise. So if this volume of water is 50 mils, let's say this is 60 mils, then this cube must be 60 minus 50, 10 mils, right? So that's just something to know from if you've ever taken, chemistry, maybe biology. I don't think they taught us that in biology, but whatever. I digress. Let's get back to the question. So the container was originally, I'm actually going to use the straw. Yeah, I'm actually going to use the straw. Since I already drew it, might as well use it. So if this was originally 4 centimeters high, and now with the toy soldier, I'm just going to, I know that's not a toy soldier, let's just pretend it is. If it was originally 4 centimeters, and now it's 6.6 centimeters, right, and increased in height that much, well, then the amount we want the amount in increase. We want the amount of volume in increase because we want the volume of the toy soldier. So we want to find the amount that it increased. So the volume that increased. The height increased by 2.6, which means that the volume of water that increased by is 2.6 multiplied by the length and the width. So we multiply this 2.6 height increase by the length and the width, and that gives us the volume increase of the water. So 2.6 multiplied by 8 and 6, so that's 8 times 6 is 48. So that's 125, about 125. A cube has a side length of 18, and it's used to ship a cylinder with radius 6 and height 12. The interior that is not occupied by a cylinder, so a cylinder is inside the cube, and the part that the cylinder is inside the cube, and the part of the cube that's not filled up by the cylinder is filled with packing material. What is the volume of the packing material? Right, so let's draw it out. I probably wouldn't draw it out on the actual test, but for purposes of this video, I guess I'll draw it. And the cylinder is inside the cube. Really bad drawing, but it'll do. So all of this volume is packing material. So from this drawing, we can reason that if we do the volume of the cube minus the volume of the cylinder, that's going to give us the volume of the packing material, right? So if the cube is 18 inches side length, then we know the volume of the cube is side cubed, s cubed. So 18 inches cubed. So we can already mark out F and G. We need to subtract the volume of the cylinder. So remember, volume of a cylinder is pi r squared h. So pi radius 6 squared h 12. So that'll be this one, J. A room has a rectangular floor that is 15 feet by 21 feet. What's the area of the floor in square yards? So rectangular floor that is 15 feet by 21 feet, and we want square yards, okay? So if you haven't taken a science class, this could be a little tricky. You might get this one wrong, and you might not know why. I'll show you how that could happen later, but let's just do the question first. So this is probably the fastest way to do the question. So 15 feet and 21 feet. Remember, there's 3 feet in a yard, so 15 feet is 5 yards. We divide by 3. I'm gonna remove the S. And 21 feet divided by 3 is 7 yards. Apparently I can't spell. Right. So square yard would be 5 times 7 is 35 square yards. That's the area in square yards. So what the test makers they're trying to trick you with this question. They could trick you very easily. So if you were to do 15 feet times 21 feet first, you would get 15 times 21 is 315 feet squared. And then since there's 3 feet in a yard, you might think there's 3 feet squared in a yard squared in a square yard. So you would divide by 3 to get square yards, and then you would get 315 divided by 3 is 105. You see that 105 is an answer choice, but it's actually wrong. And the reason is because there's not actually 3 square feet in a square yard. Even though there's 3 feet in a yard, there's not 3 square feet in a square yard. So I'll prove that to you really fast. So if we have 3 feet, well, let's have 1 yard, right? 1 yard by 1 yard. We can all agree that this is 1 yard squared in area. If we convert 1 yard to feet, that would be 3 feet. And this will also be 3 feet. And now that's actually 9 feet squared. 1 yard squared is equal to 9 feet squared. So that would be why this approach would not work. You could prevent having to even think about something like this just by doing what we did here. Just converts these lengths to the proper unit first. Just convert it to yards and yards, and you won't have to deal with this. Because dealing with that's just an extra step, and you don't need to do it. So for this type of question, just convert the unit first, and then that'll make your life a lot easier. Convert the lengths to the proper unit first. Let's see, next question. So I'm not gonna bother reading pretty much all of this part. I don't think it's that important. On the actual test, I would just skip reading that. Anyway, when the fares of the 2 cab companies are compared, what is the cheaper fare for a 5-mile trip? Right, so 5-mile trip, 5 miles would be right here and right there. So to find the fare is the y-axis. We just go up from 5 until we hit the graph. See, this is an open dot here. That means that this open dot is not actually where we stop. 5 miles does not cost $10. Actually costs, we need to go to the nearest closed dot or the closed line. So 5 miles actually costs $12 here. And what about 5 miles from this other company? We just do the same thing. So 5, we go up, open dot, so we don't stop because that open dot is not actually part of the function. It's not an actual value of the function. Go up to the nearest close dot. So that's 9. So its cheaper fare is $9. Well, cheaper fare for a 5-mile trip is $9. What is the area in square coordinate units of the region bounded by the graph of y equals f of x, the positive y-axis, and the positive x-axis? So there's actually lots of ways to do this question. We're just looking for the area of the shape here. You could split it up many different ways. I would probably when you're looking for the area of a complex shape, right, the first thing you want to do is, if you're looking for something complex, try to make it simple, right? That makes sense? So if you're looking for the area of some big shape, you want to split it into smaller polygons that we know how to calculate. Like, we don't know how to calculate the area of this. There's no formula for the area of the shape in particular. There are formulas for the area of a triangle here, a rectangle, I'm going to draw another line, a rectangle here, and a trapezoid here. Or if you don't want to calculate the area of a trapezoid, or if you forgot the area, you could draw one more line, and that makes 2 rectangles and 2 triangles. But since we do know how to calculate the area of the trapezoid, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it with just 2 lines. So let me draw that a little bit better. End up drawing it worse. All right, there we go. So the area of this triangle, let's find the dimensions of the triangle. So this point here is 2, 3. So that's 2 is the x-coordinate. So that means this length here is 2. And this length here would be 1, because this whole length is 4, because this point is 0, 4, so its whole length is 4. And then just this length is 3, because this point is 3, 3. So whole length is 4, just this length is 3. So then this length, just this length here must be 4 minus 3, so that this length must be 1. So the area of the triangle would be 2 times 1 divided by 2. Area of the triangle is 1. Now we need the area of the rectangle. So again, this point is 2, 3. So the base of the rectangle is going to be 2, and the height would be 3. So the area is 6. And lastly, the area of the trapezoid. Trapezoid is, remember, b1 plus b2 over 2 times height. So this first base, this top base, is going to be 1, because this is 2, this is 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. This bottom base, the x-coordinate here is 2, the x-coordinate here is 5. So this bottom base length must be 5 minus 2 is 3. So 1 plus 3 divided by 2 times the height. The height is this dotted line here. And since this point has a y-coordinate of 3, that height must be 3. So 1 plus 3 over 2 times 3. That will be 1 plus 3 is 4, divided by 2 is 2, times 3. Sorry, what was I saying? Okay, I think it's 6. 1 plus 3 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. Yep. So then that's 13. That is the area of the whole thing. The sum of two positive numbers is 151. The lesser number is 19 more than the square root of the greater number. And what is the greater number minus the lesser number? Alright, so this one's going to be a little bit of a doozy, but let's just try it. So try to express this mathematically. Two positive numbers, their sum is 151. So let's just say x plus y is 151, right? The lesser number, here I'd underline lesser number, and I would write out to the side lesser number is y. Just to make sure I don't forget that lesser is y. The lesser number, y, is 19 more than the square root of the greater number. So the greater number must be x, and then it's a square root of the greater number, so we need square root of x, is 19 more. Y is 19 more than the square root of the greater number x. Right. So the way I would do this is, we see a square root here. We want to try to get rid of that square root. So we could square both sides like this, but then we'd be squaring up. We could just square y squared, and then we could just square root of x plus 19, but then we'd be squaring a binomial, and we know when we're squaring a binomial, right? If we do a plus b squared, we end up with a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. It's just a mess, alright? So we want to try to avoid squaring binomial with a square root in it, so that would just make it really, really bad. So let's try to move this 19 to the other side. So subtract 19 on both sides, we get y minus 19 equals square root of x. So now at least we don't have square roots in the after we multiply it out. So now it's a little bit better in my opinion. So y minus 19 would be y squared minus, remember, a minus b squared. You should memorize this. This will save you a lot of time. A minus b squared is a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So y minus 19 is y squared minus 38. Y plus 19 squared is 361. And then the square root of x squared is x. Now we have two variables in the equation, so let's not, we need to try to get this x to be a y, so we're left with only one variable. In the first equation, x plus y equals 151, so then x must be equal to 151 minus y, right? So I'm actually going to continue the problem over here. Y squared minus 38 y plus 361 is equal to 151 minus y. Y squared minus 37y, just add y on both sides, plus, and then subtract 151 on both sides. So 361 minus 151 will give us 210 to go to 0. So I can solve for y. So we can factor this quadratic here. So y minus 30, y minus 7 is equal to 0. So y equals 30 or y equals 7. So which one is it? Is it 30 or is it 7? Well, the lesser number, remember lesser number I said was y, so lesser number is 19 more than the square root of the greater number. So if it's 19 more, well, it can't be 7 then, because, well, if 7 were 19 more than something, that other number would have to be negative. So since it says only positive numbers here, that can't be right. So y must be equal to 30. Y is equal to 30. And then x plus y equals 151, right? So then x must be equal to 121, because 121 plus 30 is 151. So then what's the greater number minus the lesser number? So 121 minus 30, that would give us 191. Alright. This list of numbers has a median of 25. Remember, median is the middle number. We have to order the numbers from least to greatest, and then we find the middle number. The mode is 15. Remember, the mode is going to be the number that occurs most often. So the nearest whole number was the mean of the list. So this question is testing median, mode, and mean. Right. So the mode is 15. Mode means number that occurs most often. That occurs most often. So that means for the mode to be 15, 15 must occur at least twice, because all of these other numbers occur once. If 15 occurs most often, then it must occur at least twice, right? For our list, I'm just going to do it from least to greatest. That's how I like writing it. It must be 15 and at least one of it 15. And since we don't know for sure what x is, I'm just going to write x, and then 30, 35, and 41. Median is 25, right? So I told you before that, well, I gave this example. If we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers, the median is just going to be the middle number, right? But what if we have an even amount of numbers? What if you have 6 numbers? Now there's no middle. Is the middle of this number, or is the middle of this number? It's actually kind of a combination. The middle number is actually the average of the middle 2 numbers, right? So the median is 25 is equal to x plus 30 over 2, the average of these two. So now we're looking for the mean. So let's just find x first, and then we can find the mean. 25 is equal to x plus 30 over 2. So multiply by 2 on both sides, we'll get 50 equals x plus 30. And then subtract 30 on both sides, we'll get x equals 20. So this number is 20. And the mean of the list. Mean is going to be all of these numbers. The sum of all these numbers divided by how many numbers there are. So let's do that. 15 plus 15 is 30. Plus 20 plus 30 is 50. Plus 35 plus 41 is 76. 35 plus 41 is 76. And divide that by the 6 numbers. 26. I'm actually going to confirm I did that right. Yep, seems I did it right. Oh, this question. This question is actually one a lot of people have trouble with. And, well, for good reason. I mean, this question is honestly really tricky, in my opinion. So, let's just think about it. Are SNT are integers? For which of the following will there be more than one solution with real number coordinates for the system? And then this is what I like to do sometimes. If I really don't know what to do in a question, I'll look at the answer choices. I'll look for a hint in the answer choices. So what does this remind you of? Something squared plus 4st, and then something greater than or less than 0. What this reminds me of is the discriminant of a quadratic, right? The discriminant of a quadratic is b squared minus 4ac. And remember, if it's greater than 0, there's 2 real solutions. If it's equal to 0, there's 1 real solution. If it's less than 0, 0 real solutions. 2 complex solutions, actually. But 0 real solutions. So these are all part of a quadratic. So let's try to get this into a quadratic form, right? So let's just try to solve the system by substitution. So if y equals x squared, then rx plus s, replace y of x squared. Rx plus s x squared equals t. And remember, we're trying to get it into a quadratic form, so move this t to the other side by subtracting t on both sides. So we have sx squared plus rx minus t equal to 0. And now we need to get the discriminant. So b squared minus 4ac, that would be, in this case, it's r squared minus 4s negative t. And then we want more than one solution, more than one real solution. Remember here, for more than one solution, it must have two solutions and must be greater than 0. So r squared minus 4s negative t must be greater than 0. And actually, there's two minuses in here, so it actually becomes a positive. So r squared plus 4st must be greater than 0. R squared plus 4st must be greater than 0. The third and fourth terms of an arithmetic sequence. Remember, an arithmetic sequence is where you have the starting number and just add or subtract a number for to get to the next term. So the third and fourth terms are 13 and 18, was the 50th term of the sequence. Right. So from this term to this term, what did we add to get from, remember, it's arithmetic, so we're adding or subtracting a number. So what did we add to get from 13 to 18? We added 5. So 5 is our common difference. Common difference is the number you add each term, add to each term to get to the next term. 5 is our common difference. And we're looking for the fifth term. So the formula for finding a number, a specific term, so number and then x is which term it is. So you go to the starting value a plus d, the common difference, x minus 1 times. So if we're looking for the 50th term, we need the starting value plus the common difference 49 times. 50 minus 1, 49 times. We need to add difference 49 times. So I'll explain this more. Let's just get the first value first. So the third term is 13. Then the second term must be 13 minus 5, which is 8. And then the first term must be 8 minus 5. The first term must be 3. And the first term must be 3. And this is the first term. To get to the 50th term, we need to do, so n50, term 50, must be equal to the first term plus the common difference d, 50 minus 1, or 49, multiplied by 49. So you might be asking, why do we multiply by 49? If we're looking for the 50th term, why are we adding 5 49 times when we need to add it 50 times because there are 50 terms? Well, think about it. This is our first term. This is our first term, and we're looking for the 50th term. So if we're trying to go from 1 to 50, we only need to add the common difference 5 49 times to get to 50, right? If we're trying to get, for example, if we're trying to look for term 2, right? We know, of course, if our first term is 3, we only need to add 5 once, right? Once would be 2 minus 1. So that's why we do the x minus 1 here. We need to subtract 1 from the term that we're looking for, term number that we're looking for. All right, so let's just do the math here. So term 50 would be 3 plus 5 times 49. And let's just put on our calculator, 3 plus 5, common difference, 49 times. The first term plus a common difference 49 times gets us to the 50th term, 248. And actually notice here that 248 plus 5, which is actually the 51st term, 253, that's also an answer choice, but that would actually be incorrect. One of these is the graph of y equals sine squared x plus cosine squared x over the domain this. Which one is it? Right, so this is something you're going to have to note. There's not really many trigonometric identities or, there's not really many trigonometric identities you need to know. One that you do need to know for sure is sine squared x plus cosine squared x must be equal to 1. I'll actually do a proof of this in one of my later videos. If you guys want that proof, just comment down below. Tell me what you want. Tell me that you would like a proof of this, and I'll be sure to make a video. Anyway, sine squared plus cosine squared is always equal to 1. And you'll see here that all of these have changing values. They're not always equal to 1. This is the only one that's actually equal to 1 at all times. So it's the only one that is correct. What is the period of the function cosecant of 4x? So another thing there's not really much trick you're going to have to know, but you do have to know, of course, that identity I showed above. It's called the Pythagorean identity, in case you're wondering. You're going to need to know the period of the trig functions. So the period of cosecant x is, let me just write out the whole thing. Period of cosecant x is 2 pi. And then the period of cosecant of 4x is going to be 2 pi over the b value. So the b value is 4. So period cosecant 4x is going to be 2 pi over 4, which simplifies down to pi over 2. At the school carnival, Michael played a game in which he will toss a penny, a nickel, and a dime at the same time. He is awarded 3 points for each coin that lands heads face up. What's the expected value? So let's see. There is a formula for expected value, and I'll try to teach you how to think about that formula. So expected value for this one would look something like this. The expected value for one toss would be equal to, well, think about it. What's the probability of heads and what's the probability of tails? Heads occurs 50% of the time, or half the time. We'll write it as a half just to make explaining it easier. Tails occurs half the time. And then on this heads 1/2 the time, he gets 3 points. On the tail 1/2 the time, 0 points. The expected value for one toss would actually be 3 times 1/2 the probability 1/2 plus 0 times the probability 1/2, which is equal to 1.5. This is the expected value for one coin toss. So for 3 coin tosses, it would actually be this multiplied by 3. So it would actually be 4.5, which is 9 halves. And now I'll try to show you how this kind of works. So we know that for one toss, right, half the time we get 3 points, the other half the time we get 0 points. So we could say that for every toss, we expect to get 1.5 points, right? If half the time we get 3 points, the other half the time we get 0 points, then we say for every toss we just get 3 divided by 2, 1.5. We get 1.5 points per toss. That's expected points per toss. And that's where this formula came from. You get the number of points multiplied by probability, and then you get all the points, all the number of points multiplied by all of their respective probabilities, and then you add all those together. That's where the formula came from. The expected value formula came from. For what positive real value of k is the determinant of this matrix equal to k? So it's not really many. There's usually only one matrix problem per ACT test. This one actually they give you all you need really. So determinant, in case you forgot what that was, determinant of this matrix ABCD is AD minus BC. So you multiply top left by bottom right minus the top right by the bottom left. So if we do that here, we get k squared minus 4 times 3 is 12 is equal to k. It says equal to k, so we just set it equal to k. And then we're just going to solve this. K squared minus k, subtract both sides, minus 12 is equal to 0. And then factor it, k minus 4, k plus 3 is equal to 0. So k is equal to 4, or k is equal to negative 3. That would be this one. Given a positive integer n, such that I to the n equals 1, which of the following statements about n must be true? So, I to the n is cyclical. So what does this mean? Well, let's think about it. So I to the 0 is equal to, well, anything to 0, except for 0 to 0, that's actually undefined, but anything else to the 0 is equal to 1. I to the 1 must be equal to I, because anything to the 1 power must be equal to itself. I to the second power is equal to negative 1, because I is equal to square root of negative 1, so I squared is negative 1. I cubed is negative I, and then I to the 4 would be negative I times another I. That would just be 1. So you see here, we started at 1, now we're back to 1. So this is going to repeat forever and ever. I to anything will always be 1, I, negative 1, negative, or negative I. So the question is, I to the n equals 1. It equals 1 here. Which of the following about n must be true? When n is divided by 4, the remainder is 0. So you see here, when we do 0 divided by 4, there is no remainder. The remainder is 0. If we do 4 divided by 4, again, there's no remainder. Remainder is 0. So f is going to be true. This is a really, really tricky question. It actually doesn't seem too tricky, maybe. But this question highlights one thing about ACT Math. ACT Math, all of these questions, a lot of them require extreme attention to detail. You need to be really precise in reading. And it's actually kind of weird now that you think about it. A math test requires really, really good reading skills. So this question has 2 parts that are tricky. You need to notice absolute value here. And then this is going to be really, really tricky. It's greater than or equal to, right? It's not just greater than, it's greater than or equal to, right? So now let's go through the question. For this domain, negative pi over 2 is less than or equal to theta is less than or equal to pi over 2. The absolute value of sine of theta is greater than or equal to 1. And that's true for all and only the values of theta in which of the following sets. Right. So absolute value of sine theta is greater than or equal to 1. So that must mean sine of theta itself must be greater than or equal to 1. Or maybe sine of theta is less than or equal to negative 1. So this is how you would break up this absolute value inequality. So can sine of theta ever be greater than 1? Never. Regular sine of theta without a coefficient cannot be greater than 1. It can equal 1 though. Sine of theta equals 1 at pi over 2. This is from our unit circle definition of sine. This is pi over 2 and equals 1 here. And then can sine of theta ever be less than negative 1? That's also false. But it can be equal to negative 1, right, from the unit circle. Negative 1 is here, and that occurs at negative pi over 2. So the answer to this question is going to be pi over 2, negative pi over 2, and pi over 2. So the tricky thing about this question is, if you didn't see this equal to, then if you did the question right, you would have picked empty set. Empty set would actually be wrong here. You need to notice that equal to right there. And the last question. Ray PK bisects LPM. LPM is 11x degrees, and LPK is 4x plus 18 degrees. What is a measure of KPM? So what does bisect mean? Bisect means the word bi, the prefix bi means 2. So bisect means to separate into half. So perfectly separate into half, right? So LPM, let's just draw out the angle, LPM. PK bisects LPM. So this is P, this is K. Bisect means that this angle must be half of this entire angle, because ray PK cuts in half this entire angle. Therefore, this angle must be only half of the whole angle. And this angle right here must also be half of the whole angle. And then also, these two angles are exactly the same. That's just all coming from the definition of bisect. So LPM is 11x. This whole thing is 11x, right? I'm just gonna delete that for now. LPK is 4x plus 18. What's the measure of KPM? So we want this. So, like I said before, these two angles, this angle and this angle, must be exactly the same. So if we find LPK, we can find KPM. So how do we find LPK? Well, from the definition of bisect, 4x plus 18, that angle, must be half of the entire angle, right? Must be equal to 1/2 of the entire angle, and the entire angle, remember, is 11x. So now we just solve. If we multiply by 2 here, the fractions cancel out, but we also have to multiply by 2 here. Actually, you had to do that in parentheses. So 2 times 4x plus 18 is equal to 8x plus 36 is equal to 11x. So if we subtract 8x on both sides, we get 36 is equal to 11 minus 8x, which is 3x. X is equal to 12. And as we said before, KPM is also going to be 4x plus 18 because it's equal to, these two must be equal. So if KPM, if x is equal to 12, then KPM is equal to 4, 12 plus 18. That gives us 48 plus 18. And finally, that equals 64. And, oof, I did something wrong. 66, sorry, my bad. That's awkward. All right, 66. And that is our last answer. All right, that's it for this video. That's it for ACT Math from the Preparing for the ACT 2018 through 2019 test booklet. All 60 questions. Thanks for watching.